All right, I'll call to order the meeting of the Board of Adjustment and Appeals meeting. There are 5 members present, therefore 4 affirmative votes are required to grant a variance or appeal. The board is authorized to grant or deny a variance by Part 3, Section 6 of the Englewood City Charter. Anyone aggrieved by a decision rendered by this board may appeal that decision to a court of record. However, such appeal must be made within 30 days of the board's decision. The variance is effective at the end of the appeal period. Building permits for construction associated with an approved variance will not be issued until the appeal period is ended. Building permits must be obtained and construction begun within 180 days of the variance's effective date. The procedure for the meeting is the case will be introduced by staff with an overview. Applicants will present their request and reasons for the variance should be granted. Proponents will be given an opportunity to speak. Opponents will also be given an opportunity to speak, and then the staff will address the board if needed. Ms. Fenton, will you please take roll?
Ms. Flynn?
Present.
Ms. Schmitz?
Here.
Mr. Friesen is absent. Mr. Taylor?
Here.
Ms. Purdy?
Here.
And Chair Finn?
Here. The public hearing for case number VAR2017-001, the applicant's Rowland+Broughton, its property 600 West Bates Avenue, is now open. The applicant is requesting to reduce the required setback. I have verification of the publication and posting of the subject property. Staff, you have the floor.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Please state your name.
Audra Kirk with Community Development. Good evening. Before you tonight is variance case 2017-001. For the record, proof of publishing and proof of recording has been submitted. Before there's any confusion, I just wanted to explain the addresses. The properties that we're discussing tonight were previously addressed 2901 and 2905 South Fox Street. They were recently combined and readdressed so that they have a West Bates Avenue address. So that's why we have some things that state 201 or 2901 and some things that say 600. The official address right now is 600 West Bates Avenue, and the properties have been combined to be one parcel. The applicant tonight is requesting a variance for a setback requirement. The setback requirement is actually a requirement when an industrial property abuts, adjoins, or is near a residential zone district. The variance request does state that the reduction of the setback be reduced from 10 feet to 8 feet. However, after further discussion with the client and tweaking of the drawings, they are requesting that you reduce the setback from 10 feet to 6 feet. So the motion would have to be made to reflect the 6 feet.
Are those the drawings that we have?
Yes and no. You don't have you don't have the absolute latest one, and we wanted to go to the 6 feet in case there's any, so that they have a little bit of leadway with the development on that site.
Okay, so they're asking for 6 feet all the way around.
Actually, no, just 6 feet on the north side. Staff had a discussion regarding the setback all the way around as it's stated in the code, and staff believes the intent of that was only to have the 10-foot setback on the property line that abuts, adjoins the residential zone district. So we're only asking for the north property line reduction at this point.
Okay, I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
No, you're fine. Okay, all properties to the east, west, and south have all been zoned industrial. Properties to the north, and I'm not sure, this property right here, this big vacant property, it's actually, there's construction going on there now. That was historically zoned industrial. In 2013, Council approved the Sound Creek Planned Unit Development, or PUD, to include commercial, industrial, and residential. Because of the approval by Council to include residential, the property owners in this zone district where our applicant has property is now required to have that 10-foot buffer, and that's a requirement that wasn't a requirement for the already developed industrial properties. So as you can tell from the site plan, which I know you have, the applicant will have screening on the east side of the property, which is the front side, as well as the screening on the north. So they will still be providing landscaping and screening on both the east and north side of the property. So again, this variance is only required due to the fact that the property owners to the north rezoned their property to include residential. If the property was not rezoned to include residential, we wouldn't have to be seeking this variance right now. So this is actually due to another property owner's, what they did with their property. So do you have any questions for me at this time?
I have, so the rezoning, the PUD was done February 4th, 2013.
Correct.
And with this variance, the only side that we're concerned about, the only one that would have to have the 10 feet would be the north side.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else before? Thank you, Ms. Kerr. The applicant may please come forward to testify in the case. Please state your name and address to the secretary who will swear you in.
I do. My name is William Odie. My business address is 1830 Blake Street, Denver, Colorado, 80205. 202. Apologies. All right. Thank you for hearing this case. Yes, so as Audra stated, the only side of the street that we're concerned about is this side right here. And one of the main reasons that we are asking for this variance is because we want to allocate our parking in the back, and in order to get the necessary drive, aisle, and parking space requirements here, it forces us to push the building beyond that 10 feet. This will provide a much better street presence. As we'll see here shortly, many of the adjoining property here to the west actually has their parking lot on the street, and in discussions with both the traffic and engineering, the better solution for all parties concerned was to move the parking to the back. This will help revitalize both streets and make it more pedestrian friendly. And the other thing to note is, even though we are asking for a reduction of 4 feet to the 6-foot setback, we are intending on maintaining the required 8-foot landscape buffer from the edge of the sidewalk to the building. So from all points of the building, we will still maintain 8 feet of landscaping between the structure and the sidewalk.
So real quickly before you go from that view, so is that the top there? Is that 8 foot? That's what we see?
Right now, this dimension right here shows an 8-foot landscape buffer. Now that is measured from the back edge of the sidewalk, which is in the public right-of-way. The building is located at about 7'4.5" from the property line.
The existing building? Or?
No, this is the proposed design.
Oh, okay. So I may be missing something, but so the setback that we're considering a variance to is measured from where to where?
The setback is measured from the property line to the face of the building. Whereas the landscape buffer is measured from the back edge of the sidewalk to the face of the building. So in the interest of conforming with the rest of the adjacent properties along this set, we created this photographic analysis, and I won't go through every single one, but all of these dots represent the photos in the following pages. This property right here is our neighbor directly to the west. This is the Bates Street side, and so what we're proposing is to basically, in lieu of what they have here as a parking lot, we're going to be providing landscaping, public street, kind of soften that for everybody. And then as we progress through here, you can see just about almost all of these properties that are identified have much less than the required 8-foot landscape buffer, and almost all of them are built directly to the property line.
So could you explain what, since now you just have to meet the property line on the front,
Yes.
why you couldn't, what the huge inconvenience would be to have 10 foot rather than 8 foot, or 7, I think you're 7 foot 4 inches back, why you couldn't just move that to 10 feet?
Because of the specific nature of the building, this is going to be an artist studio, and the programmatic requirements for the space inside of the building, as well as the restriction of moving the park. My apologies, it wasn't a restriction. It was advised through our comments with the city of Englewood to move the parking from the front of the building to the rear of the building. All of that together kind of precipitated this, where these extra 4 feet, we really need that in order to make the building happen.
So you couldn't just move the front part that's into the 10-foot buffer, you just couldn't reduce that by 4 feet?
No. It would require us to bring the square footage of the building down to a point that would not work for what the occupant of the building is trying to do.
There's not a lot in here about what the building plan is, so can you just give a general description of what this building's going to be?
The building itself will be an artist studio, which I believe is one of the uses that was desired by the city of Englewood for this particular area. The majority of the building will be occupied by the building owner as his own artist studio, but in order to create his particular type of art, it requires going through many different stages and using many different types of tools and things like that. And so, we need to have a certain amount of space to account for all of his, the tools that he uses to do the work with the metal and to do the work with the wood and to do some of the other things that he does. He also does very large format pieces, and so that is kind of why the square footage is a bit of an issue, because by reducing the square footage to a point that would make it unable for him to perform the art that he does.
Thanks.
Does anyone else have a question for the applicant? Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else have anything for staff? Anyone? All right. I'm pretty sure that's not. Okay. Are there any people here that would like to speak in favor of this request? No one's here in favor. Is there anyone here that would like to speak in opposition of this request? No one is here. Staff, any other comments?
I would just like to explain the parking situation again. When they first came in several months ago, they went through our development review team process, and at that time, they had proposed having the parking back out into Bates, and our traffic engineer said, of course, no, they cannot do that, that they had to put their parking on the back side of their building. So when they moved their parking to the back side of their building, their drive aisle right now, they do have an alternative parking plan that was approved by our director, Brad Power, which would allow them to reduce their drive aisle from 24 feet to 23 feet. If they were to move the building another 4 feet, that would reduce that drive aisle to 21 feet, and that would not be a part of the approved parking plan, nor do I think that Brad would reapprove a two-way drive aisle at 21 feet. So just for clarification on that.
And real quick while you're up here. So the building is, the way it's proposed, 7 foot 4 inches back. So you're asking for an 8 foot. Am I understanding that right?
We're at the setback is supposed to be 10 feet.
10 feet. Okay.
We're asking for it to be reduced to 6 feet.
Is it adjacent to, is that the phrasing that we've dealt with before? So are there, I see on, let's see, it's the fifth page of my packet. There's a couple properties that are also adjacent to, that seem to have the...
Is this the one you're looking at?
No.
This one?
Am I? Okay.
It was this one? This one? Okay.
That one. Okay, so you go down the street, and there's...
Down to the street, to the south?
To the...
The west is this direction towards Nancy. North is up.
So east.
Okay.
I'm looking at the other properties that have this adjacent issue. The ones that are existing there, the 3 ones that we can see, are at the maybe a 0 setback. Is that
Yes,
right? Okay.
that's correct.
And is there more properties like that when you go around the corner?
Yeah, there is, and that was part of the map that they provided. All of these right here that are numbered dots are actually built pretty much at property line without any landscaping.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you. We'll close the public hearing and have discussion up here. Thoughts? Oh.
All right. I move that case VAR 2017-001, 600 West Bates Avenue be granted a variance to reduce the 10-foot setback to 6 feet where a building abuts upon, adjoins, or is adjacent to a residential zone district. This is a variance to Table 16-6-1.1 of the Englewood Municipal Code.
I second.
So this is one where I don't see a lot of other properties in the same situation coming, asking for the same thing, which tends to indicate uniqueness to me. That's one thought.
I live in the neighborhood. I drive by that every day. So, no, the other buildings are more established than this property, so I would agree with your statement. Especially around the bend. Grain shop. The shootist.
Whirlpool place?
They sell spas. They have big wind things right on the sidewalk when I walk my dog.
I mean, I think it's something that, I guess the only question I have is these other properties that are listed at some point, if they're redone, we'll have to address this issue again. So if we're happy with reducing it for this property, we're going to reduce it for all those other properties. But, you know, it definitely, it's an industrial area, and I think by putting the PUD, it kind of snuck up on them.
Yeah, residential came to them.
Exactly. Any other discussion?
I mean, has this issue with adjacent come up before? I'm relatively new, so.
It has.
Very different part of this, well, south of here.
Yeah.
Because the road is a part of this buffer. I mean, this is not like these properties are touching. But I understand the definition that we're working with. But for me, that plays into third criteria about how it's actually impinging the character. There is still buffer there.
And I think, sorry, but on the other properties, I think from what I remembered, we always looked at the property line that was facing the residential areas. And the other property lines, I think, gave variances before to zero those out, or we didn't consider them. So to me, it makes sense to only look at the north-facing one. On the east, there's a nice vegetative buffer already that's not part of the property, so that'll stay. So that's a nice addition for this property, which I think makes it, again, a little bit more unique, because you'll have a vegetative buffer both on the east and on the north.
And if you look at the townhouses that are currently being built in the PUD, they're pretty much on their property line. The sidewalks are really close. They're going to try to maximize as much space as they can for townhouses, apartments, and single-family homes. As I plant the trees and maintain the landscape, I don't mind it. It'll actually look nice around that neighborhood.
I agree. I think it'll be an improvement.
He's asking for 4 feet so he can get the space he needs in the front rooms.
Right, and I think it's important that even though it says 10, there's still going to be an 8-foot vegetative buffer.
And that's just to the sidewalk, and then we still have the sidewalk to the street. And then the street to the... BMW shop that has the parking, I have seen those guys come around that corner, whip into those spaces, and whip out without looking. So it's nice that traffic engineering is considering that as well.
Shall we, any other discussion? Shall we vote?
I voted yes to the first criteria. It is unique that the PUD came about 4 years ago when all the other properties that are still active are literally on their property lines. The second criteria, it's still industrial, built in the area that they want to build in. So I think that goes along with that. Third criteria, not permanently impairing the use of the adjoining properties. I mean, they are trying to, the parking in the back as advised and maintaining the character by implanting the 8-foot landscape. And the fourth criteria, well, yes, they could shorten the building. I do believe putting the parking in the back and allowing this property to be developed is good enough for me.
I voted yes for the reasons stated by Ms. Flynn.
I voted yes for the reasons stated.
I voted yes for the reasons stated.
I voted yes for the reasons stated. All right. So we'll open the public hearing for case number VAR 2017-002. The applicant is Jennifer Tempas. Properties at 2020 2201 and 2235 West Iliff Avenue.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that you will tell the truth in the proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Please state your name.
My name is Harold Stitt with the Department of Community Development. Good evening, Chair Flynn and board members. Tonight before you is case VAR 2017-002 for property located at 2201 West Iliff Avenue. The applicant, Jennifer Tempas, on behalf of the property owner, Curtis Mock, is requesting a variance to exceed the maximum number of detached garages by one and exceed the maximum total accessory structure floor area of 1,000 square feet by 728 square feet. These are variances to Table 16-6-1.2, Summary Table of Dimensional Requirements for Accessory Structures of the Unified Development Code, Englewood Municipal Code. This application came to us as a result of the property owner's interest in selling a portion of the property. I might point out that 2201 West Iliff Avenue is this property, and 2235 is this property immediately to the west. Both properties contain a single-family home and a detached garage. Both properties are owned by Mr. Mock. We have been informed, I guess anecdotally, that Mr. Mock would like to sell 2235. Prior to that sale, he would like to re-subdivide the property, and that re-subdivision is represented by this hatched area on on the 2235 property, and add that to the 2201 West Iliff Avenue property. Ordinarily, that would be a permitted re-subdivision. Unfortunately, the zoning ordinance does not permit two detached structures, detached garages, on one residential property. Thus, in order to affect this re-subdivision and sell the southern portion of 2235, a variance is necessary. In the packet was a copy of a permit that was issued in 1981. Well, I guess I forgot to put that in but it's in your packet.
We have it.
And the permit was issued on August 17th, 1981. And I have to say for the record that was 2 weeks before I started with the City of Englewood, so I don't have any fingerprints on this particular building permit. But there's a note in the remarks section that said, garage door opening is temporarily open to the east. And that applies to this structure right here. It seems to us, as we discussed this at the staff level, that was an indication that at some point the garage door would be relocated, most likely to the south side of the garage, and thus provide access for vehicles for the 2235 property. I will let the applicant explain what the garage is used for. And you can see from the staff report that we have not taken a position with respect to approval or denial of this variance, because there are a number of circumstances that I think the board needs to consider before making a decision on this case. But I would be happy to answer any questions.
Can you tell me when, so we have the building permit in 81?
Correct.
How old is that you can only have a garage this size? When did that come into being?
At least 2004, when the Unified Development Code was adopted, but there may have been regulations prior to that, back as far as the mid-90s.
Do we have any measurements on how far 2235, the primary residence there, is from that proposed rear property line?
That would be based on scaling. It would probably meet the 20-foot required rear setback.
Okay.
That lot, if it is in fact created, this lot here would meet the minimum requirements of area and frontage for the R2A zone district.
And then the garage would also be set back enough from the property line as well?
That would be a responsibility of the property owner to make sure that the required side setback for that garage was met as a part of the minor subdivision process.
Okay.
The board have any other questions?
I don't know if this is for the board, but they've presented other aerial photos of neighboring properties that appear to have more than one accessory structure.
That's correct. This area is zoned R2A, which permits single-family and duplex dwellings. The zoning regulations in the R2A allow for a detached garage for each detached unit. So, as I indicated in the staff report, I believe it's not unusual to see, a property with two detached garages on it. Although that would be a, two single-family attached or a duplex, as opposed to a single-family unit with two detached garages.
And what is the largest shed size the city of Englewood considered?
Shed size is 200 square feet. I might point out that the application from 1981 indicated that the garage would have been 720 square feet, roughly 24 by 30, when in fact, at some point, the garage was actually built larger. The information that we have available indicates that the garage is 1,008 square feet, so 42 by 24 or something to that effect.
With the re-subdivision, does it meet all of the other necessities of how much square footage you can have on the property versus green space?
There's no maximum limit to a size of a property, and based on where the garage is sitting right now, I guess the only question in terms of dimensional standards would be the south property line, and that would, like I said before, that would be up to the applicant or the property owner to make sure that where that line is placed provides the required setback from the garage, as well as making sure that the remainder property meets the minimum 6,000 square foot lot area.
Any more questions for staff? Thank you. May the applicant please come forward to testify. Please state your name and address.
Yes, I do. Jennifer Tempas, and 4 Parr Circle, Littleton, Colorado, 80123. I'm not sure what else to add to what Harold said, except that when Mr. Mock built this, it was the only garage there. But he intended, he actually had tried to replat that. He mistakenly went to Arapahoe County. They never told him he was at the wrong location to do that, and they allowed him to replat that and include the garage on with both garages. And it was about a year later that the city of Englewood came knocking on his door and said, this is not correct, this is illegal. But he, in that separate garage, the reason it's a little bit bigger too, some of the work he does is with leasing of other properties, taking care of them. He's a barber, has his workshop in there to sharpen his tools and so forth and keep the equipment, things of that nature. But once he gets this redivided, to answer the question about the front lot, it'll be approximately 6,200 square feet. So that lot will,
adhere to the city of Englewood's requirements. And his lot will expand to a little bit under 17,000 square feet. We're in the process right now. The surveyor has completed that, and I'll have those for the replatting. In looking around the neighborhood too, well, first of all, you do have affidavits from neighbors that are not opposed to this. Mr. Mock, he keeps things in a very neat, clean, orderly fashion. If you look at some of the pictures of some of the other lots around the neighborhood where there are multiple detached buildings, and they're not all duplexes, they are single-family homes. I specifically went around looking at that.
I don't actually have any
You don't have pictures?
neighbor notifications. They're coming?
Oh, yeah, I brought them tonight.
Okay.
So, in fact, there's another at 20. They live at 2268 West Iliff, right across the street to the south of Mr. Mock, and they had heard that he was going to be building a high-rise there, and that's why the variance. And I explained to them, and they stated to me said they didn't want to get up and speak, but they stated that they were not opposed to it, to him having the two buildings.
Can you address why the garage door, why there's a note? Can you shed any light on the note, why the garage door says it temporarily opens to the east?
I don't know why it says that, but when he originally built it, it was actually, his dad had, and you must understand that, this is the Mock subdivision. In fact, I believe it was his mother that had bought all this land back in the 40s, was it? 1938. And, he kind of controlled where houses went and things like that. And he told Kurt, build your garage, right here, and meant to be the entrance for his house.
When did he deed it to Englewood?
I'm sorry, when did he what?
When did it become the subdivision? When did he deeded the land to Englewood? Is that correct?
Oh, he deeded, you mean Baltic Avenue and so forth?
Well, so this whole area you just said.
Oh, she bought the
subdivision.
land in 1938, that whole farm area. It was farm at the time. No houses on it, and they slowly started putting houses on. But they've worked with the city of Englewood through the years. They vacated land so that they could put Baltic, which is just to the street to the north of Iliff.
That's a little bit too much information.
Oh,
we just
sorry.
We have 4 criteria that we have to fit.
Right, I understand.
So, although it's fascinating history,
yeah,
none of that really will fit anywhere in our 4 criteria.
Got it.
Does the board have any questions for the applicant at this time? We're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any persons present who wish to speak in favor of this request? None are indicated. Are there any persons present who wish to speak in opposition of this request? None are indicated. Staff, any other comments?
I might be able to shed just a little bit of light on the garage door situation. If you take a look at the permit from 1981, when it was originally filled out, the address for the garage was 2201. At the time, as been stated, the property, all these 2 lots were owned by the Mock family. It was in the early 2000s, I believe, that Mock subdivision was created. I think that might have been what you were referring to.
Right, but, so that's when the subdivision was created.
The mock subdivision.
Right, but it was under Englewood before
Right.
that.
Right.
It says dimensions of site 60 by 200. Does that indicate a double lots being?
No, that's a single lot. Many of the lots in northwest Englewood were very deep. So, for instance, this lot, in fact, both of these lots, the original lot went from Iliff Avenue up here to essentially either the middle or the northern edge of Baltic Avenue. And in many cases, in particular here, the property owners dedicated 25 or 50 feet, depending on the situation, for the creation of this street. And then at some point in the past, these two lots right here were carved off as separate properties. But at the time, the Mock family owned all of this, and in fact, lots farther to the west. But if you look at the building permit application, you'll notice that scratched out on top is the 2201 address, and written in by staff members is 2235. And I think how this confusion about the garage door came up is when the original applicant, whether it was Mr. Irving Mock or Mr. Curtis Mock, I think they considered both properties as one, 2201 and 2235, and perhaps didn't realize that putting a garage on this property with the door facing to the east would be in violation of any zoning regulations. When the staff reviewed it, it was clear that it were two separate properties with two separate single-family homes. And while, as stated in the staff report, the garage at 2235 is a legal garage, the question is, why is the garage door on the east side if it's for the benefit of 2235? Because in order to access that garage, you would have to cross 2201. And hence the note, the garage door opening is temporarily open to the east. And that note tells me that the staff member that put it on there anticipated that at some point in the future, the garage door would be moved. Obviously, after 35 years, that hasn't happened.
So if he considered this, with your theory, one big lot, wouldn't the dimensions be greater than 60 foot by 200? Wouldn't
Yes.
it be at 120?
Right. I mean, I say that consider it one piece of property, not one lot. If you own a lot of property, you might not necessarily think of it in terms of individual lots.
When was the house at 2235 built?
According to the records, that house was moved to that property in 1959.
Does the board have any other questions for staff? Thank you, Mr. Stitz. The public hearing is now closed. Do I have a motion?
I move that case VAR 2017-002, 2201 West Iliff Avenue be granted a variance to exceed the maximum number of detached garages by one and exceed the maximum total accessory structure floor area of 1,000 square feet by 728 square feet.
Is there a second? Can I second it? I'll second the motion. Discussion.
I'm struggling with the third and fourth criteria. The third criteria that I'm just concerned that we're creating more issues with the two properties involved. And the fourth criteria, this does seem to be somewhat self-imposed. So those are the two I'm struggling with.
I'm struggling with one as well, because I don't know what unique physical condition exists. I think it's interesting that the city made a note that the garage door is temporarily opening to the east, which indicates to me that the city thought the garage door would open to the south. But that never happened.
Well, then why would they approve it also?
Right.
Why wouldn't you just decline the drawings and say, add your note on the drawings that it has to open to the south because it's for this address?
Well,
Instead they...
Perhaps, and we don't have the drawings,
Exactly.
but perhaps the drawing was shown that they opened to the south. Because the word that throws me off is the temporary, which means someone went and looked at it and said, this garage door is opening the wrong direction. It's interesting in a lot of ways, because if this lot was already constructed in the L shape, I still wouldn't really want to grant it a variance to add another additional garage. To me, it's not that big of a lot. In the past, we've granted other detached garages when the lot was much bigger, and I know that we've turned down requests to build additional garages when the lot was this size or even a little bigger than this. Any other thoughts? Shall we just vote? All right.
I voted no. Because, and only because, the four criteria we have to go off of is that there is no unique physical condition. The garage could have the door put to the south for the 2235 as permitted by the city. Second criteria, well, the city pointed out there, most of them are relative to duplexes and larger properties. Again, not really consistent with the other buildings across the street. Third criteria, well, there is a record that it was temporary to the east. And fourth criteria, it is a self-imposed hardship because if he just kept both properties and did not sell it, he wouldn't have this issue.
I voted no for the reasons stated.
I voted no for the reasons stated, and that in reference to the third criteria, that I'm concerned about the potential impacts that this involves related to these two properties and other potential needs for variances that we may be creating.
I voted no for the reasons stated.
I voted no for the reasons stated. So we have the approval of minutes from January 11th, 2017. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I so move.
Second.
We have approval of finding of fact.
We have to,
You got a motion, you have a second, right?
I have a second.
Okay, so now you...
So, yep, let's vote. Everyone in favor say aye. Aye. Approval of finding of fact. Need a motion for finding of fact of 707 East Jefferson Avenue.
oh, I so move.
Second. Anyone have a second?
Second.
Let's vote. Everyone in favor, please say aye. Aye. Against? Nay? None? I need a motion. Approval of finding of fact for 3475 South Emerson Street, 851 East Hampton Avenue.
So moved.
Second.
Let's vote. Everyone in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? The ayes have it. Staff's choice. Staff, do you have anything for us?
I just wanted to let you know that next month we'll be having a new member. His name is Robert Elstrom. So he'll be joining you guys next month. And there is a variance next month. It's for it's for a garage setback on Shenango Street in the rezoned district.
Is he going to be a full member? So we'll have another full member but no alternate?
That's correct.
Okay.
We will not have an alternate until the July series comes around.
Okay. Attorney's choice.
I have nothing further to add.
Anything from the board? All right. Adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Do we need to vote on this? All right. We're adjourned.